Rachel Notley is the Alberta NDP leader, and Anna Murphy is a 2S LGBTQ+ advocate who is also the executive assistant to Ms. Notley. Thank you both for joining the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Rachel Notley, I'd start with you. The federal government said they're going to look at what Danielle Smith does in implementing this policy and see if there are any violations of the Canada Health Act and what steps they might take. How much risk and exposure is there for Alberta if they go ahead with this?
Well, I think obviously it's very likely that they will be seen to be violating the Canada Health Act because they will not be providing, important healthcare services that physicians groups across the country believe are best practice, and so they'll be violating it. The degree to which the Canada Health Act gives the federal government significant opportunities to penalize or otherwise incent better behavior by the federal government, I think is still up in the air. But it is certainly a clear demonstration that young kids in Alberta are going to be allowed to access less health care in Alberta because we have a discriminatory government in this province as it relates to the rest of the country. You
said yesterday that Danielle Smith and her cabinet are essentially inserting themselves into people's lives when it comes to important medical and personal decisions. You said they are the last people who should be doing that. Why?
Well, listen, the threat to Alberta's kids is not the issue of some kids' existence as transgendered human beings. The threat is a UCP government that has been peddling misinformation about this issue in order to scare families for months and years now. And the threat is a government that is prepared to use these vulnerable children for the purposes of their political objectives, which in this case is Danielle Smith's effort to maintain the support of an extreme wing of her party. But generally speaking, this is a party that has demonstrated a complete misunderstanding of science, a complete misunderstanding of almost everything to do with medical science, that has a past experience of meddling in a curriculum only to be told that they were plagiarizing, that they were providing factually inaccurate information, and that they were breaching truth and reconciliation. They are just not equipped for any of this stuff, and it's ironic because they argue they're about freedom, and instead what they want to do is walk into the doctor's office and sit themselves down beside the physician, the parent, and the child. It's outrageous.
So Anna Murphy, this is where I'd like to bring you in, because Premier Smith said these policies are intended to protect trans youth from irreparable harm by making life-changing choices at what she considers to be too young of an age. What do you think of that argument?
Well, what I would say is at the age of 5, I knew that there was something wrong. I didn't have a word for it. I didn't have a name for it. But I knew that there was something not quite right. And at the age of 12, I wanted to be nothing more than just like every other girl. And I can remember very vividly saying to, friends that when I, get older, I'm going to find a way to, to become a girl. I grew up in rural Alberta. The term transgender, gender diverse, at that time, and even now still, there wasn't the type of visibility that we see. And so no one told me, no one forced me, no one groomed me to be transgender. It was an inherent understanding of what I knew to be true in my heart and soul of who I was. And so to have any premier or any government or anyone in community come forward and somehow disingenuously say that they're going to protect youth by way of bringing forward policies and guidelines that actually do more harm than good and put these individuals at greater risk is heartbreaking. And so it, this is both very personal for me because I've been there, but I just think of all those youth right now.
So I want to ask a personal question, if you'll indulge me,
of course.
and a curiosity to understand it, because I've never had that experience, and so it's not mine to understand. But at that young age, you knew. At 12, for example, do you think you would have been equipped to make a decision about hormone treatment or puberty blockers, and a little bit older than that, about surgery. Like, do you think at that age, like this is what the Premier's argument is, that you're not ready for it. What do you think of that as someone who has been on that journey?
What I would say is that it was around 5, 6 that my parents caught me in the bathroom wanting to self-mutilate myself. So in terms of do kids know? Yeah, they do know. They know who they are. They know who they are in their hearts and their souls. And by way of dismantling comprehensive human rights and access, which you were speaking about in terms of access to healthcare that we provide here within Canada, that is the risk that we're running, that kids, adults, that Canadians are going to seek out other solutions for their healthcare, whether that is through the private sector, whether that is just feeling that they are so abandoned and so alone that they revert to what we also know is a reality for transgender Albertans and Canadians, which is a rise in attempted suicide, which is a rise in self-harm, which is a rise in mental health or homelessness. Right. And so for any Premier to come out and say, I'm doing this to protect you, when in reality, you are putting these people in very serious risk. This is a Premier who is a gambler. She gambles with pensions. She's now gambling with the human rights of youth. She is showing that she is a bully to those who are not as strong to stand up against her, which is why it is so important for folks like Premier Notley, for Mayor Gondek, for community organizations across Alberta that are standing up to say, this is not who we are. This is not what we want our province to become, because it is. We need to put our allyship into bold action, because the Premier is gambling with vulnerable youth and their lives.
Ms. Notley, one of the other proposed changes is having and thank you for sharing that, by the way. I know it's tough to talk about that on TV, but thank you for telling that part of the story.
My pleasure.
One of the proposed policy changes is parents have to opt in to sex ed, sexual education, sexual orientation, or gender identity lessons in schools. I mean, there's an administrative burden that creates on schools and teachers, but what do you think the intent is of that policy?
I have no question about this, because not only are they telling parents that they have to opt in, they're also suggesting that the UCP cabinet will now exercise control over the content of
the department needs to approve it.
Right. Well, the department, but we all know who will actually be doing it. So the reality is that what they are doing is they are significantly limiting access to basic sexual health education for all kids. Trans kids, LGBTQ2S+ kids, all kids. And so in that, they are going to lose access to safe sex education, birth control education, consent education. Those are all things. On top of that, they are now basically getting ready to import Alberta's own version of Don't Say Gay into the schools, because they're saying that teachers can't talk about it unless they have gone through this unmanageable bureaucratic effort of getting one-off approval. So we are going not just backwards 10 years, but in some ways backwards 40 years.
So Anna Murphy, just as a final point, we spoke with Skipping Stone, the advocacy group that's based in Calgary yesterday.
Incredible group.
And we've heard from EGAL as well about legal challenges against this. What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think the federal government could do? Because Randy Boissonneau was here yesterday talking about that allyship, saying they need to be a champion for trans kids.
Right now it does give me, hope, because we do have a federal government, as well as, parties federally, including the federal NDP. And we have allies who are maybe right now a little bit quiet in the Conservative caucus. So it does give me great hope.
What do you think that is? Why do you think there's silence? There was a story by my colleague in the Globe and Mail, Marika Walsh, that they told them not to talk about this. The order went out from the OLO to tell their MPs not to speak on it.
That would be a question for them. It's a question I have for them, right? Because these are folks that I consider friends, and I hope that they see this as an opportunity where I'm not calling them out. It's not my, choice to make for them, but I would call them in and be like, this is a time where we need you. I am relatively in a position of privilege, and I have a platform and I have a voice. But again, for those youth out there who, again, are potentially at risk of homelessness or, rising mental health, they need you. These are the issues that, quite frankly, should transcend partisan politics. These are the issues that we should be able to get together as municipal governments, provincial governments, federal government, NDP, UCP, Conservative, whatever you want to paint each other as. These are the issues that we should be able to come together and say, you know what, we're all Canadians. We all deserve to have human rights and to protect and embolden those. And then we can move on to, some of the bigger issues. This should be an easy issue that we all say, you know what, as Canadians, we agree unwaveringly and unanimously. But we're not seeing that. And so it's, it's encouraging to see, ministers come out and speak very strongly. And I look forward to seeing how they move forward and finding what levers they can pull on. I know provincially we're looking at what our next steps are, and municipally as well, at least in Calgary. Everyone is kind of starting to figure out what is the path forward, knowing that, sadly, this is just the beginning.
Anna Murphy, Rachel Notley, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having us.